I am
Okay,
ready.
everybody, welcome back to your crisis coach with Scott H. Silverman and me on this happy Patriots Day. You know what Patriots Day is? There, Scotty. You know what Patriots Day is out on the West Coast?
Tell me.
So today is the day of the Boston Marathon, which is known as Patriots Day in Massachusetts.
Fair enough.
And it's a legitimate holiday in the state of Massachusetts and bleeds into my area of Connecticut as a Red Sox fan. And the Red Sox already played a game at 11 in the morning. You know why they play at 11 in the morning?
Right after the marathon?
No, during the marathon. So they get the people off the street. They get to watch a game, and then you get to leave. They time it perfectly. If everything goes as normal, you
Right.
could get out and go to the finish line and watch everybody finish.
That's
So you
cool.
get 35,000 people out and go, because I was there 12 years ago now? I was there the day of the bombing, in Boston at the game. I usually go to this game, but I was there and it went into extra innings. So that's why there weren't as many people as could have been at the finish line, because the game went into extra innings and everybody stayed and watched the game.
Interesting.
But, yeah, very interesting. And it was a good race again today. Think they did the marathon in 2 hours and 4 minutes, something like that. You think you could top that, Scott? Because we could do it next year.
It takes me that long just to get up in the morning.
I know. It's insane how fast they go. Yeah, I could drive it in that, probably in Boston traffic. So you brought a friend with you today, huh, Scott?
I did. Yeah. A friend and a colleague, and a brother from another mother. And, the guy that gives me feedback that nobody else will. So, yeah, it's good to see you, Fred, and good to be back. Happy Easter to everybody who celebrates. What an interesting Monday, no doubt about it. So we're going to get right to it. Jay Wylie is a guy that pretty much runs everything in our business and keeps the lights on. And if he can't, he lights candles. So he always keeps it lit. And Jay was here with us, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, and talking about our veterans program. And he himself is a veteran. He'll tell you a little bit about his story. But today, the exciting news today, Fred, that Jay's going to talk about is, as of January 2025, Confidential Recovery is now able to serve active duty military. So, and I say serve in our treatment center so we can help them with substance use disorder and underlying mental health issues and help support their family. San Diego is the third largest city in the country of veterans, and we have a significant active duty population and a lot of just, retirees and families who have been related to the military, being a military town, obviously on the West Coast. So it's real exciting to be able to say and proud that, we've now added serving our active duty and their families. So I'm going to turn it over to Jay and let him talk about, a little bit about himself to update people. And Jay, if you wouldn't mind, just explain how and why serving active duty is important.
Well, thanks. I guess I'll start with that. And thanks for having me. Thanks for asking me back. So San Diego, part of the reason that San Diego has such a large veteran community is it's such a large military hub. It's one of the largest concentration of military forces in the world. After the end of I guess I'll call it the first Cold War, looking at how things are developing. But since the end of that first Cold War, there was a movement to reduce the size of our active duty military. And so a lot of military bases were closed all over the United States, and especially in California, many of them in the San Francisco area. And so all of those activities that had happened at the Mare Island Naval Shipyard and at Naval Air Station Alameda and all those things got moved to San Diego. So now San Diego is the hub for the Pacific Fleet and for a lot of naval aviation, a lot of Marine Corps aviation. Camp Pendleton is one of the largest Marine Corps bases in the world. And so you're talking about a constant inflow of several hundred thousand service members and billions of dollars of military budget every year. And a lot of those folks are coming here from nothing against Boston, but they're coming from the East Coast and cold climates, and they get stationed in California. And when their tour of duty is up, they're like, I'm going to stay in San Diego. So it's kind of a self-sustaining veteran population. It just keeps on growing and keeps on going. In fact, that's how my wife's family got her here. Her grandfather came from Wisconsin, served in the Navy in World War II, and never left. So that's a big part of why San Diego is such an important military city. For us to be able to serve active duty, active duty is an amazingly stressful undertaking for anybody. Even if you don't go to combat, even if you're not in harm's way, just day-to-day operations in the military are stressful. Operating a military aircraft off of a ship at sea. I mean, think about that. It's crazy. Carrier pilots would tell me landing on a aircraft carrier at night is like putting a postage stamp in the middle of your living room, turn off all the lights and nosedive, and if your nose hits the postage stamp, you made it. That's a very stressful undertaking for everyone involved. And there's the constant separation from family. On ships, we stand duty. So 1 out of every 4 to 6 days, you're 24 hours on that ship, even in port. And that's 24/7. That's Christmas, that's holidays. That's a lot. And so that stress level is something that we as military members need to learn how to cope with. And many of us don't do it particularly well. Part of my story, I'll talk about that in a second. But a lot of times, that's where you start getting into substance use. You start seeing military members who are self-medicating because they're dealing with that stress. They're dealing with family separation. They're dealing with trauma. And they're trying to make their lives better by taking in substances to deal with all those uncomfortable feelings. And that can have a really negative impact on your career. It can affect your security clearances. It can affect your ability to promote. And so being able to offer substance abuse treatment to a military person who might be thinking they have a problem, but might be afraid to bring it up to their command, I mean, that's a lifesaver. That's an opportunity to save someone's life, either them or their family member. It's a fantastic opportunity. So we're really glad to be a part of that. And we try and live up to our name, confidential recovery. We are able to keep that exploration that individual is doing confidential, at least as much as.
Jay, before you go into your story and how you got involved with all this, Scott had mentioned San Diego is the third. What are the first and the second?
I think Texas is the first because there are, it's a giant state, but there are so many military installations there. Fort Bliss, Fort Hood, you name it. There's, I think, 5 or 6 different Air Force bases. There used to be a naval base in Ingleside. I think it's number 1, and I think Los Angeles might be number 2, just based on numbers of veterans.
Excellent. So go ahead, Scott. Do your line of questioning. I want to hear from you.
Well, and that's per capita, by the way, Fred, as well. So it's all relative, but still, and I think San Diego, because we're obviously on the body of the water, the West Coast, we have a large naval presence here as well. So, Jay, I want to try to take a different direction today. And one of the things, to your point, about how tough it is for active duty. And I think for veterans, I mean, the ethos, and you've talked about it, you're trained to take care of people. Your job is to make sure your buddy on your right or your left, you're aligned and you're following the direction of your commanders and doing what needs to be done and saving other people's lives. And when it comes to taking care of your own, it's not even on the checkoff list. There's no box there. So when you talked about how, they need that help when they're unfortunately anesthetizing themselves, if you will, or they're self-medicating to deal with the feelings, because most people I've learned that don't know how to process their feelings when they're under the influence, their skill sets don't get better. They just get numb and they get denied and they get suppressed. So what would you tell people that are out there suffering, and how would you explain to them why it's important to ask for help, and that I think the environment today versus say 20 years ago with the role of people that are in active military is different. And I would assume that the upper echelon really wants to see people get help when they need it. But I could see if they raise your hand, it could be a career killer. So what would you want to tell people, and share a little bit about your experience? Because, you've got lived experience. I know that. And I'll let you share whatever you want. And what happened for you that might have been different today versus when you made that turn, and even before that, why you maybe didn't, whether you didn't know or it didn't catch up to you until it caught up to you. A lot there, but all yours.
Yeah. I think the short answer to the last part of your question is I was living in the past mindset of you don't ask for help. And I was in a position where if I had asked for help, it would have ended it. And so I held on till the bitter end, and until I crashed and burned. That there was.
How do you know it would have ended? What was there? Was there some message there, or was that in your head, or did your contemporary say to you, don't go to don't go to your commander, don't go to your, the upper echelon? So what was it that triggered you not to ask for help, that thought you'd lose your job? Was there some sort of sign on the wall that said that, or did you just put two and two together?
The fact that being in command is such a difficult screening process, and they really are, I don't want to say looking for any reason to relieve you, but it's pretty easy to get relieved of command these days. And so I was pretty certain that if I had said, hey, I think I have a drinking problem, that would have been a disqualifier from that special program. And I think that's true for many special programs in the military. But kind of going back to your earlier conversation. So you're right. The military does a very good job of assimilating people into the military. It brings people from all walks of life, and it breaks them down to parade rest and then reassembles them in the form of a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine. And it makes them part of a team, gives them a sense of identity, a sense of purpose, and standard operating procedures. You're trained, you're equipped, and you have a mission, and you know what to do, right? It's very clear what that guidance is. And like you said, you want to be dependable, reliable, you want to be consistent, you want to be professional, and you don't want to show weakness. You want others to depend on you. You don't want to have to depend on others. You never want to let down the team. You want to accomplish that mission. So it is very hard, and we call that the warrior ethos. And it's very good for accomplishing missions and surviving combat and winning wars. But yeah, it's not a very good self-help mindset. And it is difficult to get out of that. Now, for the veteran, when you get out of the military, the mission is over. Those standard operating procedures are no longer there. I mean, we don't even know what clothes to wear, right? We don't have a uniform of the day anymore. We got to figure that all on ourselves. And that can be really daunting. And that is, I think, why you see so many veterans struggling once they transition into civilian life. And that's part of the reason you have the higher than average veteran suicide rate. But for active duty, it's kind of the same thing. You're still in it. And there is that mindset that if I raise my hand, if I ask for help, I'm going to take myself out of the team. I'm going to let the team down. Now, it has gotten better. It has 100% gotten better. But it's really, really hard to change the military culture. It takes a lot of time. So now commanders are talking about self-care. They're bringing more things to the troops where they're saying it's going to be okay. But it's kind of like our experience in law enforcement, Scott. When the sheriff says, "Oh, we got that under control," they know they can ask for help. I don't know that that's necessarily true, and it's less true for special programs like special operations forces, pilots, things where there's a very high failure rate, and there's lots of people standing in line wanting to take those slots. So I think that is the challenge that we're going to have to face. The way that I've seen overcome this is by people with lived experience reaching back out into the community and saying, this is what I did. This is what worked for me. This is what I was thinking, feeling, and experiencing, and giving them a confidential way to ask for help. Now, most commands, there's someone called the Drug and Alcohol Programs Administrator. So the military has a zero tolerance policy for drugs. So if you have a drug test and it comes back with a positive result from any controlled substance, any substance that the military says is illegal, you're going to be administratively separated from the military. However, if you were to go to that Drug and Alcohol Program Administrator and say, I think I have a problem, there's supposed to be a confidential way that you can get treatment and move forward. So I think that is probably the methodology that we're going to have to use moving forward, is engaging with this way to ask for help, and encouraging people to do it through people with lived experience. Because, I mean, that's the model of pretty much every recovery program in the world. And I think that's what we're going to have to celebrate. For me, I waited until I got into so much trouble that my career was already over. And by that point, I said, well, I can ask for help now because it's a non-recoverable spend. I might as well just bail out. And that's exactly what I did. You know, for me, I came in the military. I was in the Navy for a long time. I had a very good career. But, you know, my story is similar to a lot of folks. I didn't realize how much fear and perfectionism that I had. And as I was going through my career, it became this cycle of fearing that I was going to fail at the mission. I wasn't too concerned about getting hurt or killed. Thought I was going to be I didn't care about that as much, but I definitely didn't want to fail at the mission. Excuse me. Didn't want to let the troops down. But my perfectionism set the bar so high for success that I'd fear failure at this mission. We do the mission and we get a 90%, and all I could think about was the 10% that I didn't get. And I just beat myself up mercilessly about that.
Let me ask you about that behavior for a second.
Sure.
Was that something that you think was organic for you as a human being that got developed over time being in the military, or is that something when you got to the military, it kind of grew? It's based on the experience and the people around you. Meaning, is that part of your? Obviously, it could be part of your personality now, but was that who you were as a younger person? You know, you a perfectionist, somebody who really wanted to get the job done a certain way, because and that maybe motivated you to get into the military, or in the military you got that. That kind of experience because of how it was structured. Can you?
I think both are true. Both are true. It was part of my personality, but it was absolutely amplified by the military environment. There was a real expectation placed on us in the military that you are in control, that you are, all those famous sayings, fortune favors the bold, you make your own luck, carpe diem, all those things are really pushed on military folks to encourage them to control the environment that they're in. But the reality is you don't control the weather. You don't control the enemy, and they get a vote. And I think that's the problem, is that zero defect mentality, it really affects the way that people think. I remember a commanding officer of mine just ripping me apart. It was like 2:00 in the morning. I hadn't slept in days. And he was just ripping me apart about this exercise that we were supposed to be doing. And the aircraft that was supposed to be joining us for the exercise broke. And I couldn't find a replacement in the middle of the night. And that was my fault. And this is a multinational exercise. And I'm like, those other countries, they're partying. They're having a great time because they're in Hawaii. They're having the time of their life. They're not going to just all of a sudden jump in an airplane and fly out in the middle of this little exercise. This is a 17-day exercise. They're going to just fly some other time. But his expectation was, I expect you to make this work. And, and I said, I guess he must be right. I should have been able to fix that. And that's just not reality. It's taken me a long time a lot of reflection to realize, hey, that guy was just an a-hole. You know?
So you said something earlier that was interesting to me. Anyway, I don't know if it was interesting to Fredd or not, but you mentioned that those who are active duty, even if they haven't, I'm going to paraphrase now, been to war, but they've been in the military, are impacted by some of the behaviors, I guess, or the culture of the military that make it difficult, to raise your hand. I've seen it with law enforcement for years, and I know a third of law enforcement are veterans. And as a quick side note, I know for a fact with my experience with law enforcement, working with leadership, sheriffs, chiefs of police, that they've all created wellness departments now, kind of like what companies have done with EAPs, employee assistance programs. And I think a lot of times companies do it because of liability, meaning they really need to do it or they want to do it to help their rank and file. But in law enforcement, what I've seen, and I think it's changed a bit lately, is the leader doesn't really want to know about, let's say, you, but they want to know that their team, the wellness department, is there to provide whatever it is you might need. Meaning, if they're aware of it, they have to maybe take a different kind of action. Right. So they just want to know, hey, make sure that Jay gets what he needs, make sure Fredd gets what he needs. And, you as a department have autonomy, which unfortunately rank and file doesn't believe. They think they work for the, management. So going back to the first part of the question is, what is it that you think happens if somebody, obviously, when you say the word war, I mean, it's just a scary word, and in your active duty, but you're still suffering from the underlying issues, maybe PTS that's untreated or untreated, trauma, and, but you've never fought, if you will, actively, but you've trained to get ready for it. So is there a difference there or obviously, but that sounds like a goofy question, because clearly if you're going around the world and you're in the middle of the stuff and you're not sleeping for a couple of days and, you got to keep one eye open to stay alive versus someone who may be stationed here who, like you mentioned earlier, in Hawaii, but they're still, they have a structure, they have a command, they have footprints in the sand. It's not like being an entrepreneur. You follow the rules or the rules will follow you.
Right. I don't think there's any trauma that's quite as equivalent as combat. So I think that is a separate entity. However, the fear when you go on a patrol, you don't know what's going to happen on that patrol, right? So the fear is the same regardless of what happens. Then if something happens, you have that extra layer of trauma of seeing and experiencing and going through what happened. But that fear is still there. And the preparations you make for the patrol are the same, regardless of the outcomes. A lot of what we do in the military are that type of situation. Two ships, one of the strengths of the Navy is that we do logistics at sea. The United States Navy is different from almost any other Navy in the world in that we can keep our ships at sea for extended periods of time. But the way we do that is to put two ships side by side and to shoot lines across and to pass fuel to each other at about 150 yards apart. That is a very stressful exercise. And you have to do that for like 3 hours, depending on how much fuel you need to take. And I can tell you that there were a couple of those that I've done throughout my career where something didn't quite go right. And, it looked like we might be having a collision. And, that's not combat. That's day-to-day operations. But, there's a rogue wave. There's an engineering casualty on the steering system. There's, somebody misheard an order and puts the rudder over 1 degree in the wrong direction. And all of a sudden, you're doing this. That's terrifying. At least it was for me, right? And so being in command and being in that situation, that is to me, is a form of trauma, right? The same thing with aviation accidents and all the other things that we do. So yes, there is a trauma just in doing the day-to-day stuff and the feelings. it just goes to the next level when you actually have to take it into combat. But yeah, I think that's very astute observation.
And that's
All
not
gave some, but some gave all.
That's not to mention the trauma that they came into the service with already.
And
their
that's true too.
childhood trauma.
People are bringing baggage. I mean, a lot of people are coming into the service to get away from, really bad circumstances. And
do you think, like you were mentioning, how the military is doing more HR type things, to help people? Is it a PR move or is it for the good of? Because I know less and less kids are joining the service than before. So are they just jumping on this to adapt to make people more apt to join the military?
I think they're learning kind of the same way law enforcement is learning that, we're not going to be able to maintain our force unless we're doing something to help the people that are serving. When we first started the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War, there's a lot of people who are coming back with a lot of PTS because it was, a low intensity conflict. Improvised explosive devices were a big part of the problem. That's kind of that mentality I talked about, that patrol mentality. You had no idea if you're going to come across one of these things or not. And so a lot of guys, and we were cycling people through deployments. You had different Marine units, they deploy to Iraq, and then 6 months later they deploy to Afghanistan, and then 6 months later they deploy to Iraq. So when we were doing those things, when those guys were coming back, they were having big problems coping with the trauma of those experiences. And so what military medicine did is they started prescribing a lot of medications. It was a lot of, take these pills, you'll feel better, so you can get back into battle. And I think we learned that's not an effective strategy. That's a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. You're not really dealing with the underlying trauma. And so I think what the military is learning is that they're going to have to use the same methodology that everybody else does, which is, group therapy, talk therapy, maybe some medication, but, as part of a larger program, and they have to address it and they have to allow their guys to ask for help. So I think it is an attempt at a cultural change. It's just some elements of that cultural change have not caught up with the screening process. I don't think they're at the point yet where law enforcement is with the wellness departments quite yet, but I think they're trying to develop that. And I think by TRICARE starting to offer more providers outside of military medicine is bringing an additional capacity to address that issue. I think that's part of the reason they're making the changes they are, is because they realize they have to.
And it's a different entry point for people in the community as well, and probably a lot less threatening if they can do something like that.
Yeah.
So we're getting close on time. So Jay, is there anything that you want to share personally that people should know, or we would like them to know about you, and what your experience has been, and where you're at today, and part of the reason you want to give back?
Yeah, I think the thing that I would say is that there's hope, right? There's, no matter what has happened to you in the military, you can recover, and there are people who want to help you to do that. And, there's a few people from my military career that I'm not really on speaking terms with, but I can count them on like one hand. Most of the people that I served with, when I explain what happened to me, what I went through, and what I'm doing now, are nothing but supportive. And that includes admirals, that includes, commanding officers from all different walks of life. And I think that's the thing that I would really implore veterans and active duty service members to do, would be to talk to somebody you trust, tell them what's going on, and, be willing to ask for some help, and then accept the help that's offered, because it's out there. And there are a lot of veterans in recovery. There are a lot of active duty service members in recovery who can help show that way and walk alongside you in your recovery. It was certainly true for me. And that's why I'm here now, is to say, hey, look, if the captain of a destroyer can screw up as monumentally as I did, and then can recover and start a new life, be with my family, have healthy relationships with my wife and my kids, and be giving back to the community, you can do it too. And you can't let a bad discharge or a bump in your military past hold you back from your full potential. Sometimes it's a little tougher road to hoe, but you can do it.
So, Jay, speaking of your wife and children, give me an example of what you do outside of the addiction recovery and the military. When you step away and just want to have fun with your family, what are some of the things you guys do?
Man, I like it quiet. I like doing walks. I like doing hiking. I like being in nature. I like watching movies and TV shows with the kids. I like my son has fallen in love with hockey, which I guess is not that quiet, but he taking him to a hockey game, but I don't have to play it. So, it's fun to watch them experience things. It's fun to be there as they go through things and just be a part of. And that's something that a lot of military folks miss out on, is they don't get to participate in that family thing. They're always career first. So it is so nice to just be part of and to share those experiences with the people we care about.
Yeah. And how do you fall in love with hockey in San Diego?
Yeah, there's a local team, AHL. It's not NHL, but that, to me, that makes it more fun.
Yeah, it is. It's good. Listen, I love hockey, but I'm in the middle of it all. So,
I'm
in the middle of it all. I could, I often tell people within a 3-hour time drive, I could go to 6 different professional teams.
Yeah, and good teams too, for sure.
Yeah, but I'm a Carolina Hurricane fan. Doesn't make sense, but they used to be the Hartford Whalers, so I follow them.
There you go.
But okay, so Scott, what else? You want to give your phone number out there, Scott?
Yeah, but before I give mine, Jay, how do people reach you? What's the best way to reach you? The website, phone number, Morse code. What's the best way?
I think our website, confidentialrecovery.com, is a really good one. You could also do veteransnavigationcenter.org. Those are probably the best way. You can also see a little bit about us, maybe make you a little bit more comfortable. If you did want to call, we do have our hotline, if you will, 619-776-9701. But you can also find those numbers on the website as well, if that's a better way for you. But I think the websites are a good entree because it answers a lot of questions.
Are you guys involved with texting yet? And can people text you?
They can text that number I just gave.
Yep.
For sure.
Okay, good. Because I know that's a big, I was reading an article on how much that has changed with suicide prevention. Being able to text.
That's a great point, because our population of veterans is so diverse. We have many older veterans that are like Vietnam era who are reaching out for help, and then we have younger veterans, and the younger veterans would certainly prefer to text than call. No doubt.
And it feels more private. They can be a little more honest in words when they can't vocalize it and stuff. It's really made a difference in the suicide prevention community, where they're reaching out. It's almost a therapy session. They're reaching out to somebody to talk about it may not be at that same point of about to end their life, but where the thoughts are there, and that person could then have a conversation for 2 hours via text with them. And it's really changed the outlook. And young kids, because kids as young as, listen, it happens, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, they know how to text.
They do.
They just do. They know how to text, but they may not be comfortable calling on a phone because, and stuff. But okay, Scott. So give your phone number out, Scott, because people love to call you.
They do. They do. And by the way, I'm texting people back now. If I can't get to their call, I'm sorry, I missed your call. How can I help? So you can always reach me at 619-993-2738 or ScottHSilverman.com or Scott H. Silverman anywhere on the internet, and reach out. I mean, if nothing else, let's talk about options and opportunities and consequences and incentives, because hope and help is out there. And as Jay said, we like to think that we're one of the premier providers on hope and help. And that doesn't require insurance. That just requires a heart and passion to help others.
Yeah, and as we've said often when we're looking for guests and stuff, I invite anybody that wants to come on and speak about their issues or their solutions or their life and traumas. But they have to realize they do not have to show their face. We will never force you to be on camera. If you do come on, only because somebody had asked me who was in a dicey situation, and I had told them, the only people that'll see you is me and Scott. We're as honest and forthright when we tell our guests every time if there's something that was said and you want to discuss it, there's an edit after this. So I just want people to be comfortable. This is not a live show. It's three guys at this point. At this point, there's three of us right here talking like gentlemen to each other, and that's how we treat all our guests. If that person chose to if Jay called me in an hour and said, listen, I don't think we should release this, I don't even have to call Scott, because Scott would say, let's not release it. It's just we're passionate enough and care about the person over the show. I think I said that right. I'm speaking for you too, Scott, but is that correct in your eyes?
I think, I agree with all of that. And I was just thinking as you're saying that, maybe we should get Jay's wife one day to get her perspective of what it was like watching somebody and being there to experience that kind of, trauma and change and transformation.
It's funny. The old joke goes that, if you're a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, when you tell your story at Alcoholics Anonymous, people laugh. But if you told your story at Al-Anon, ain't nobody laughing.
Right.
It's a very different perspective.
Yeah,
that's why I don't go.
Yeah, listen, she's invited on anytime she wants to come on. I'm sure she's a special person and has a lot of knowledge from her perspective on the thing. So, okay, well, Jay, thank you again for coming on, because I believe this is your third time, maybe fourth. I don't know.
Third.
We've been around a while.
He's our frequent flyer, Fred.
Right.
Yeah, he's our top dog. You're top dog.
Right now. I get a set of steak knives.
Our highest paid.
Well, Scott's going to start mailing checks out to all the guests, he said. So you know where to find them. But this is your crisis coach. I'm Fredd Carroll. That's Scott Silverman, Scott H. Silverman, if you're searching for him on Google or ChatGPT. That's Jay Wylie. And if nobody has told you they love you, we love you. And we will talk to you again next week. See you later, everyone.